In the aftermath of Kevin McCarthy's announcement that President Biden would face a formal impeachment inquiry, the Republican Party continues to publicly trip over itself, and not just between moderate Republicans and the far right, but within the far right Freedom Caucus. But before we unpack all that, if you haven't yet, please hit that like, subscribe, and the alert bell. Maybe check out my Patreon. I'd appreciate the support. All right, folks, so again, I'm sure you're tired of hearing about it, but this is the dominant political narrative, and it's not going to change anytime soon. The story about the sitting president, President Biden, facing a formal impeachment inquiry by a rogue Republican House of Representatives is right now as important into the news and to the political meta as Donald Trump's many criminal indictments and the question of whether or not he's disqualified from holding office under the 14th Amendment. It shouldn't be this way, but we have to talk about it because there's so much packed in here, so much bad faith from the GOP, so much insanity, so much escalation and accelerationism. And these two clips that we're about to play are kind of emblematic of that. So we've been seeing for some time that there's been a discrepancy within the GOP between, again, the alleged moderates in the Republican Party, but we're also seeing signs of fracture within its crazy elements, within the Freedom Caucus, okay, the Donald Trump surrogates within the Republican Party in the House of Representatives. So they held a press conference after Kevin McCarthy announced that he was going to have Biden face a formal impeachment inquiry. And during that press conference, they're asked, what's the proof you have to justify this inquiry? This is the first clip we're going to play. I want you to see how the Freedom Caucus reacts, how furious they get. It's a sight to behold, and then we're going to play a different clip, and we'll unpack it together.
Would do that. I don't think it'd be appropriate. All right, last question. Yes, ma'am.
Can I just ask, what actual evidence do you have as opposed to allegations to show to the American public that would merit an actual impeachment inquiry of Joe Biden and prove that today isn't just about some of you...
Oh, I don't know.
McCarthy for the sake of enacting political revenge.
This isn't about political revenge. We have the bank accounts. We can see, ma'am, you can see that the homes that the Bidens own can't be afforded on a congressional or Senate salary. You also understand that it's not normal for family members to receive millions of dollars from overseas interests. Those things aren't normal. That's not normal to have 20 shell companies. These things are not normal, and it alludes to not only just widespread corruption, but money laundering, if not influence peddling itself. And we also have the president, the vice president at the time, on record saying that the prosecutor was fired. Well, son of a bitch, the prosecutor was fired, right? Because the prosecutor was going after the company that his son was working on. That's what we have. If you can't see that, if you are that blind, look, I'll turn it over to the attorneys.
People can't see that. They think it's political revenge.
It's because you don't report on it.
You're not, We're reporting on it today.
I'm not sure how you know what the American people think, but here's what they might wonder.
We know what the American people think because we have credible polling on it, consistent polling, which indicates that the vast majority of Americans don't think that there's a sufficient basis for an impeachment or an impeachment inquiry, okay? Now, a couple of things I want to address here. You see what they're saying? The predicate for this impeachment inquiry, they're saying they don't believe that President Biden should be able to afford the homes that he owns. Hunter Biden engaged in nepotism. Then he says, Joe Biden arranged for the firing when he was vice president of a prosecutor investigating a company that Hunter Biden worked for, Burisma. As we've discussed, and we're not going to spend too much time on this, that's been debunked. Viktor Shokin, the Ukrainian prosecutor, was considered the world over by the Biden administration formally, the Obama administration formally, as well as the European community, as being corrupt for not pursuing prosecutions against corrupt Ukrainian actors. He was not pursuing investigations against corrupt actors. That's why President Biden, then Vice President Biden, on behalf of the Obama administration and the European community, lobbied to have him fired. More importantly, Viktor Shokin was not investigating Burisma at the time of Hunter Biden's employment. Okay, Shokin was investigating a period before Hunter Biden joined the board. So Hunter Biden would not have been criminally connected at all to what Shokin was investigating. So all of these are debunked. But here's the thing. Note how defensive he gets. If you can't see that evidence, you are blind. Well, somebody should tell not only his fellow Republican, but his fellow Freedom Caucus member, again, a member of this far-right bloc of Trump loyalists, because Ken Buck, a member of that group, he doesn't see the evidence either.
2 days ago, you said that the time for impeachment is when there's evidence linking President Biden to a high crime or misdemeanor. You said, quote, that doesn't exist right now. Do you still feel that way tonight?
I have not seen any evidence that links President Biden to Hunter Biden's activities at this point. I will be getting a briefing later in the week. I'm looking forward to understanding more of what the Oversight Committee has uncovered. But at this point, I have not seen that evidence.
So it's not just the press, apparently, who are blind to this matter. It's a fellow Republican. It's a fellow Freedom Caucus member. It's a guy who is a part of the same group that held that press conference, Trump loyalists in the Freedom Caucus. So that seems to me that the GOP has failed to make a persuasive case here. Typically speaking, impeachment inquiries are not summoned on, a whim. You're supposed to have a sufficient basis, a sufficient predicate to justify that level. And then after the impeachment inquiry, you proceed to a full impeachment vote. They're not there. Apparently, by the standards of their own fellow Republicans and their own fellow far-right Freedom Caucus members, they're just not there. And that's probably why Scott Perry in that press conference got so defensive, is because he knows that any predicate he offers, well, I think that the property value of the Biden's house exceeds what they could have been able to purchase on their own. Stuff like that is really not a basis to try to impeach the sitting president of the United States. This has become overtly political, and it risks, again, an increasing escalation. But we'll see what happens. But right now, it's not just Democrats calling this out. It's not just Republicans calling this out. It's fellow far-right crazy Republicans like Ken Buck.